Little League official says, in all of my years, I haven't seen any girls good enough to play.
No girls are allowed to play. What do you think just in general about the girls playing?
They shouldn't play. The issue here is the feeling of degradation.
I remember like it was yesterday. There were 3 men sitting behind a table with a white cloth on it, and they all had their little books. And I got up there, and they said, well, you can't play. I said, why? And they said, because you're a girl.
In the spring of 1974, Janine Cinseruli of Peabody, Massachusetts, was one of a growing number of girls determined to play Little League baseball. But according to Little League rules, girls were not eligible under any conditions.
I told my mom, and she said, well, that sounds silly to me. She called Little League and couldn't get through. She called the little local paper, the little Peabody Times, and they put a tiny little blurb in the paper. And from there, the Mass Council Against Discrimination picked it up, and it just blew up from there. They called me, they said, do you want to do this? I said, yeah, I just want to play baseball.
I like baseball, and usually there's no one around here to play. They were all at games.
Janine Cinseruli's parents hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against Little League Baseball. The case garnered the attention of the local news.
Can you tell us about some of the letters and calls?
Well, some of the letters, most of the letters, I couldn't even repeat because they were so obscene.
Your family's getting death threats because you want to play a game.
Right.
How does a 10-year-old start even processing that?
I didn't. I really didn't. My mother took the heat mostly. We got some death threats. They used to call the phone. They used to throw rocks at our house. My brothers got crap in school. What was the big deal? She's 10 years old. She's good. Let her play baseball.
How do we want equality?
The early 1970s had brought a rising, nationwide wave of female empowerment. In September of 1973, Billie Jean King famously beat Bobby Riggs in a battle of the sexes tennis match.
Let's watch Bobby Riggs.
And a growing number of young girls and their families were fighting for the right to play on Little League teams. One of those girls was Maria Pepe. In the spring of 1972, Pepe says, a coach of a Little League team in Hoboken, New Jersey, noticed her at tryouts.
He came over and he said, are you going to sign up? And I looked at him and I'm like, well, you know I'm a girl. He's like, well, can you play? And I'm like, yeah, I can play.
She played a few games, and some of the coaches of the other teams noticed that there was a girl playing. The other coaches notified the national organization in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and the national organization told the Hoboken team they would have to kick her out or else they would lose their accreditation as part of Little League.
Maria's coach soon showed up at her apartment.
He wanted the uniform back. That was very hard. I got to keep my cap.
The National Organization for Women, known as NOW, filed a discrimination lawsuit on behalf of Pepe and other New Jersey would-be female Little Leaguers. The suit sparked protests throughout the state.
I don't want my 10-year-old girl sliding into second base and having your 12-year-old boy tagging her on the breast. I don't want my 10-year-old girl rounding third base or second base and having your 12-year-old boy tagging her on the rump.
The case went to a New Jersey appellate court in the spring of 1974.
The guy who was the head of the Little League testified that the ball might hit them in the chest and they could get breast cancer. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. And the decision was a pretty famous quote that said, the Little League is as American as hot dogs and apple pie, and there's no reason to deprive little girls.
The state appellate court ruled in Maria Pepe's favor on March 29, 1974, paving the way for girls in New Jersey to join Little League teams. But by then, Pepe had aged out of Little League.
There was a heartbreak at a young age but I do get to play forever through all the girls that came after me.
One of those young girls who benefited from the Pepe ruling was Elizabeth Osder.
I have a very distinct memory of sitting in our kitchen and hearing on the radio that there had been a decision by the New Jersey Supreme Court that girls could play Little League. Nobody else was around this sort of private moment of joy when I was a kid. Like, I could do this. And I was afraid when I went down to tryouts because I was aware that I was the only girl.
In her first game, she was pictured on the front page of the New York Daily News.
The New York Daily News was the largest circulating newspaper in the United States at that point. That was a big deal. Was just blown away that they gave it that kind of treatment.
Meanwhile, the parents of Janine Cinseruli, the girl from Peabody, Massachusetts, decided to press on with their lawsuit. It eventually wound up in state Supreme Court.
I had to get on the stand. There I am on the stand, and I'm 10 years old, and they're drilling me. They're drilling me about things like what happens if you slide into someone and he touches your breast? What happens if you get hurt? Why do you want to play? Do you want to be a boy?
Do you wish you were a boy? No. Some girls can play just as good as boys and better. They get turned down because they're a girl.
Like Maria Pepe, the court ruled in Cinseruli's favor. In her second start after the ruling, Cinseruli struck out 16 batters. Similar decisions in favor of girls soon dotted the legal landscape across the country. 2 months after the Maria Pepe ruling, on June 12, 1974, Little League Baseball finally relented.
Little League Baseball said today that it will, quote, defer to the changing social climate and permit girls to play on boys' teams.
I always say, like, tell that Maria Pepe I'm a fan and I'm grateful. She is somebody that I've never met. She is somebody that I have known of all my life and probably is the most significant historical figure in changing the trajectory of my little life.
These pioneering women also changed the trajectory for so many other girls. In 1984, 10 years after the Pepe ruling, Victoria Roche of Belgium became the first girl to play in the Little League World Series in Williamsport. And 10 years ago, Mo'ne Davis became the first female to pitch a shutout and win a World Series game.
It's over. Complete game for Mo'ne Davis.
Today, Little League says 80,000 girls a year now play Little League Baseball.
I didn't want to change the world. I wasn't out to make a name for myself. I wasn't out to do anything. I never, ever, ever drive by a Little League field and go past it. I always stop and look and see if there's any girls out there. And there was one time I drove by a field and there were 2 girls playing on the field. And I just kind of smiled and nodded my head and felt really good.
Let's always remember the quote from New Jersey Judge Sylvia Pressler. Little League is as American as the hot dog and apple pie. And there is no reason why that part of Americana should be withheld from girls.